Hi everyone and welcome back to the Crafty Yellow Camper. Today I've got a card for you which I have cased from the lovely Ruth Trice over at Artful Stamping. This is a technique she showed in one of her videos. She used normal florals and I wanted to see if it would work to make a Christmas card, and thank you Ruth, it worked really well. So thank you for your detailed video. Sometimes as Stampin' Up! Demonstrators, we can't always think of the original ideas, and it's really nice to do something that we call case, which is copy and share everything. So yeah, you've got the lovely Ruth to thank for this video. So let's get started. So I'm going to use the Christmas season stamp set and the Christmas to Remember stamp set, and these are both stamp sets that went over from last year's seasonal offering into the annual catalogue. I really loved them last year and I still like them now, so I thought it would be time to get them out again. So what I'm going to do, I've got half a piece of A4 in Evening Evergreen, and that's going to be our card base. So I'm just going to move these out of the way a little bit and fold this in half. Okay, some people prefer to score theirs, and I sometimes do and I sometimes don't. And for the purposes of this video, I just grabbed a piece of cardstock that I thought would be the right colour. Okay, that's that done. So that's our base. And then for the front of the card, I've got a piece of soft succulent, and this measures 10 by 14.3, which is the basic C6 card matte layer for a card in the UK. If you're in America or someone else watching this, you might wish to adjust it to your card front sizes. Okay, so what I've done, following Ruth's lead, she used stamps, as I said, from a couple of floral sets, but I wanted to make a Christmas card. So following her lead, I've already mounted my stamps up. Now this is where the Stamparatus absolutely comes into its own, or any other type of stamp platform you've got, but I can't rave about this enough. I have actually had a Tim Holtz one in the past, and I have to say this one is better for several reasons, because the hinge moves, you can take the plate off like that. There are two plates that come with it, and you can do either photopolymer or red rubber. So for photopolymer, you need this foamy, hopefully you can see that on camera, this foamy mat underneath. And for red rubber, you just take that foam mat out. We also have grid paper that is the right size. So originally with my other Stamparatus or stamping thing, platform, I used to cut down just some scrap paper, but it's really handy to have the grid paper that actually fits. And you can see I've already given this card a go. So what I've done under Ruth's instructions was I've moved my card away from the corner. Now I use a Misty Corner magnet in my Stamparatus. This isn't something that Stampin' Up! Sells, but I find personally that keeping the card out of the corner gets you a better result most of the time. If you've watched my snowflake stamp video, you might not agree, but anyway, we worked that out in the end. That's another video, go watch it. So on Ruth's suggestion, I've marked the corners so I know exactly where my piece of cardstock needs to go, and I'm just going to hold that down with one of my magnets. Now what Ruth did, and I've already mounted mine, so if you want to see the entire process, go and watch her video. But basically what she did was she pulled out the stamps she wanted to do, and she laid them stamping side down across her piece of cardstock until she got them in the position that she wanted. Well, I've already made this card, so obviously I don't want to pull them off and do it again, put them on again. Seems like a waste of time. So these are all my stamps. So as I said, I've used the Christmas season stamp set, and we've got some pine cones. This is actually, with the pine cones, this is actually a two-part stamping set. You can see here, look. So the pine cones can be doubled up, but I've actually used them on their own and they work just as well on their own. Now I'm going to leave my stamp box there because it acts as a bit of a raise for the platform. If you don't do that, then you risk putting pressure on the hinges of your platform. So that's just my top tip for that. And I'm just going to move my... Right, So the other thing you need to do is you need to make sure that the magnet that is holding your stamps down is out of the way. Okay, so you can see I've positioned, sorry, I'm trying to tip that so you've not got the glare of my light because it's getting dark here. I've positioned the stamps. Some of them are hanging over the edges. That's absolutely fine because this is smaller than our base card, this layer of cardstock. And I've tried to keep the stalks wherever possible sticking out over the edge because we don't want to look at stalks. Okay, so just lay them in whatever position you want them to be in. And then come in with your Versamark and give them a good inking up. And I do mean a good inking. Oh, please excuse me coughing. The children I look after have had various coughs, colds, snotty noses, and I think they've been very generous and passed it on to me. Okay, so now what we're going to do is stamp that Versamark onto our piece of cardstock. Now, I'm sure most of you know, but for anybody new watching, Versamark is a clear ink. It takes a while to dry. It's tacky, so you can use it for heat embossing and foiling, and it's clear. So if you look at this, if you buy one, yours will be beautifully snowy white. Mine's well used. You can get a re-inker for it, and it doesn't really matter that it looks absolutely disgusting, so long as it's nice and juicy. Okay, so I'm just going to lift that up. And then I should, but you won't be able to see on the film, I don't think. That might just look like a few. Ah, there you go. You can see it very faintly. Can you see those pine cone shapes there? And the beauty of that is that you can see if you've missed any bits. It's also really good for doing a sort of a shadow technique on really dark cardstock, something like our Night of Navy. If you stamp in Versamark, it sort of comes up as like a watermark effect. So I'm just going over this again just to make sure that we've got as much ink as we need. And then I'm just going to press that down again. And then just to make sure, I'm going to go over it with my little hockey puck. And it isn't an air hockey puck, it's specifically for people with dodgy wrists like me to get an even pressure. Okay, now let's have another look. Yeah, I think, oh no, we've just got a little bit of that pine cone there. That's not gone down flat, so let's just give that an extra ink. So at this stage it's really important to make sure you get everywhere nice and inked up, otherwise this isn't going to work. Okay. Right, yep, I think that will be okay. So at this point, we're going to very carefully, because we don't want to smudge the Versamark, remove it from our stamp apparatus. Now, just for the purposes of this video, I'm just sitting mine on top, but if you've got a bit more desk room than I have, I would suggest that you move your stamp apparatus to one side. Okay. And then what we're going to do, we're going to pour some embossing powder. Now, I have got copper embossing here. Ruth used silver on hers because her base card was Starry Sky, I think, and obviously blue and silver go really nicely together, but for Christmas I thought the copper would be quite nice. And we just flick off any excess there, just tip that back in the pot, a little bit of housekeeping. Chinese takeaway tubs make a really good tub for embossing powder because they're big enough to get a card front in, and McFlurry spoons work nicely as well for sprinkling the powder. Okay, so I'm going to bring in my heat gun. I'm going to heat this up, so apologies for the noise. And you'll see it start to change colour from the dull brown that the copper embossing powder is to a nice bright shiny copper, hopefully. Can take a little while. There we go. There we go. So you can see there I've got the pine cones. I've got some frondy bits of fir, sort of fir tree there. I'll turn this end round. You can see if there's any powder you haven't heated, because obviously it will still be the dull brown colour as opposed to the nice shiny copper. And the same goes with silver. Silver embossing powder tends to be grey before it's heated. Just make sure you've heated it all. I'll just do this side over here. Now some of you might be sitting there thinking, oh, when I do that the card warps, which it does because the heat makes it curl towards it. So what you can do when you're sure that you've got it all heated, just give it a minute for the embossing powder to cool, because that is not wet exactly, but when it's warm you can smudge it by putting finger marks in it. And then if you just turn it over and heat it from the other side, that should straighten out your card for you. There we go, that's better. Okay, so now what we're going to do, we're going to put it back into the Stamparatus, but we're not going to put it back in the place where we started, which is why we've got the, oh actually I've just seen I've got a little bit of powder that isn't heated. So always check. There we go, right. As I was saying, we're not going to put it back where we started, which is the reason for marking it. We're going to move it half a square on my grid paper to the left and up. So we're just going to push it up a little tiny bit above where we were, slightly to the left and up about half a square. That's it. And then we can put our magnet on again to hold it down. Now, I know that this is jumping about a bit because it's been heated. You can always sort of flex it back the other way, but it'll be fine. Okay, so now what I'm coming in with is some Evening Evergreen. And I'm going to ink up my stamps. This is where sometimes the little mini cubes that we get in the kits are handy. I don't have an Evening Evergreen one. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to stamp this onto the card front to create us, oh, don't do what I'm about to do. I've actually put it in upside down, so make sure you get it up the same way. So we're going to go back to our marks where we started, and then we're just going to go up and across very slightly. Yeah, make sure you put it in the right way. Top tip for today. Easily done, don't do this card in a rush. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we are going to stamp that down onto our card front. And this is the clever bit that Ruth managed to work out in her brain that my little brain wouldn't have worked out. There we go. So that, oh no, we've got a bit there that isn't inked properly, so let's come back in with our ink. And again, this is the beauty of the Stamparatus, is that you get a second chance, where if you were to be doing that with a block, as soon as you take it out, that's it, you're done. Just making sure that we've got all those images. Again, that's the handy bit, you can flip it up and flip it down. Okay, so now what we need to do, just gonna grab a corner of some tissue roll. Okay, I know this tissue pack, this kitchen roll's got re-inker on it, but not on this corner. And then all we're going to do is buff off the ink, because the embossing powder will act as a resistant to the ink. So I'm just buffing off, you can see there, look, just buffing off the ink that's gone onto the embossing powder. There we go. So that's the, I'm just going to move this out of the way. So that's the theory behind it. And Ruth has called this the shadow technique. I just realised I've got a little bit more ink up there. Let's buff that off. Okay. And it makes it look like the leaves are sort of floating, which I really like. So I'm just going to bring in the finished card that I made earlier so that you can see what I've done. So what I've then done, to save you listening to me moving around my craft room. I've then run the whole thing, once it's properly dry, I've run the whole thing through the Merry Melody embossing folder. I've run the whole thing through there just to give it a little bit more texture and take out any of that plainness in the background in between the images. And then what I've done, I've used a sentiment from Christmas to Remember. They have a holly jolly Christmas, because we've got some holly in there, although I've just realised I've covered it up on this one. I should put the greeting somewhere else next time. And then I've used this punch, stamped my greeting in soft succulent on some white, and then stamped another plain shape from some evening evergreen scraps, just to give that a little bit of a shadow like our other images. And then I've got this gorgeous soft succulent satin ribbon, which I've just tied in a little bow just to finish it off. And then obviously inside I'll put a piece of white card to write on. So that's my card for today. Thank you, Ruth, for the inspiration. It's a really lovely technique, and I'm really pleased with how that's come out. Your card was lovely as well. So come back soon for another bit of inspiration. I'll see you again soon. Thanks for watching. Happy stamping.